minutes or so. I want to ask a question to all of you because you all have such unique experiences. To just talk about how your career journey has impacted your perspective in terms of the value of the work that costume designers do, right? So, however that feels to you, what have you learned over time working in production, and how has that impacted the way you think about the work of costume design?
Well, I have decided that I don't use the word character anymore when I teach. I've started to loathe the word character because that's not what we're being asked to do. I brought a prop. I brought a screenplay. Right? There are no pictures in a screenplay. Screenplay is just words, right? So I don't think, Jay, we're asked to create character. You used the word magic before. In the last 20 years that I've had time to think about this, i.e. I haven't been working as a costume designer. What's kept me up at night is that we really want the audience, us, to lose themselves in the movie. So once the lights go down, we're on a ride. We pay for the ticket to go on a ride, right? And Jerry Bruckheimer, who's the producer, said we're in the transportation business. Right? So we move everybody. And you're not supposed to hear the music. The music is the heartbeat. You're not really even supposed to notice their actors. You're meeting someone in the middle of their life. We're supposed to be creating real people. And here's the thing. We have to make you believe that there are consequences. You're rooting for a happy ending. You're sad if somebody dies. You can't do that unless you're completely involved with the movie. So we are not stars. I love Bob Mackie too. And I always said I was going to retire in Vegas and just design showgirls, okay? But that being said, our work can disappear into the tapestry of the narrative and should. Because I said it in the video because I've come to really believe this falling in love, with the movie is what we're part of. And that's where I'm at now.
I fell in love with the movie, but I remember the costumes. I grew up with a father who, oddly, in Meadville, Pennsylvania, loved musicals. And every night we would sit up and watch Sid Charisse and Gene Kelly, and I knew all the road shows. I knew all those guys. And man, do I remember the costumes. I almost got choking up now. Teary-eyed watching Fred Astaire dance with Ginger Rogers in that feathered dress that almost killed her because she got tangled up in it several times. But those images just stay with me. I kind of remember the movies, but I remember the clothes. I remember those gorgeous gowns. I remember White Christmas and Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye dressing up for that Sisters number. And man, that propelled me, I think, to where I am. I mean, I dressed up the neighbor's dog and we put on circuses and, Beauty was a wonderful white English Shepherd dog, but he needed some pants and a funny nose. And that inspiration started there and just took off. And I was in a small town in Pennsylvania. We created our own theater company, which still runs today. I still send them money, not much, because they're in Pennsylvania. But think when your soul and your heart is there and you're passionate, you find the way. And sadly, and I'm gonna quote one of my favorite films, gorgeous costumes, Shakespeare in Love. It is the business of show. And you come out here and you think, oh wow, Hollywood, I'm gonna do this is the world. And then you find out it's really about business. It's really about accounting. You better learn it. And your little creative self dies a little bit. And so you find those projects maybe that aren't the big money makers, you know, maybe it's some little independent project that really speaks to you and sings to you. And the most gratifying thing an actor ever said to me, I was doing an equity waiver theater piece, and he came in, he said, put him in his costume, and he said, you know what, I didn't know who I was until I put this on. I almost burst into tears. That's like getting an Oscar. I'll never know. But what was the question? Can I answer it? Yeah, be passionate.
That too. That when I started out here, it was only cable TV. There was no streaming. When the Emmys came up, it was at 45 shows that were eligible to be nominated. In this last Emmys, I think it was 650.
Whoa.
And I feel like you still care as much. Less people are going to see your show, but you still work so hard to make the best looking show. And whether you have, budgets are sadly decreasing, but that doesn't make you work less hard to create what you want to create. And when I don't have a lot of time to sit and watch, but when I do tune in, I'm so impressed with what I see now with small shows, big shows. The level is just so incredible, and the whether we're being paid for it or not, it's even to me more reason why the pay equity thing is so important, because 650 shows and you're working so hard, many people working 80, 90 hours a week, and it's not just the designers, it's the supervisors and the ACDs and the illustrators and the agers and the dyers, the tailors, everybody needs to be compensated for the work that's being put out. That's brilliant, is what I have to say.
So I want you to stand on that. One of the things I teased when I introduced you is that you wear two hats. And so, is there any particular way in which your work as a producer has given you some perspective on the work that you did as a costume designer?
Not for me personally, nothing changed, but because with our production, we happen to have 3-4 shows running at a time, it's changed how I approach running a department and helping. There's a couple here in the room that I've had the pleasure of working with, where I'll start the show and leave and they will take over. And I like watching I learn a lot from others' approach and how they hire their crew or their staff, hire their crew, or how they choose to design and illustrate and work with their made-to-order customers, or how their approach of aging, dying. And then there's always the budgeting and working with how. I think it's just given me more agency with the line producers, the UPMs, in saying, this is what we do, and you don't say, I want this. You say, I need this. To get the look of this show, we need to have this. I need to have this crew. They need to, luckily, when Ryan spoke at one of our Guild Awards, he was so impressed with everybody's equity signs. Everybody's holding up equity signs, and he looked around and there was like Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep and all these wonderful actors, and everybody. He was so impressed the party that this guild threw and how passionate everybody was about pay equity, and it stayed in our conversation for a long time and still is there. And it took a little bit for the studio to catch up, but I totally went off course. It doesn't affect how I design, but it affects how I help, hopefully, the designers who step in on our shows. So engaged.
I know, so many other comments. So, you all have had such unique experiences, and you've kind of touched on this in terms of your passion for being intentional and talking about inclusive design. But how has your experience as a costume designer and your career overall in entertainment affected your perspective on the craft of costume design? The art, the science,
Yes.
the magic.
I'll stand firm in my lived experience. I've been very fortunate to have traveled and lived in many places on this world. And unbeknownst to me, every new country, every new language, every different custom has informed my creative process along the way. Unconsciously, not even knowing it. And so when I have an opportunity to read a script that I'm really excited about, there is mental Rolodex in my mind of how I could recall certain things, how my time in Tibet really influenced something so incredible off of my first season 1 of Harlem. Unbeknownst to me, the montage sequence was that of a Tibetan woman and her husband's. So Tracy would have never known, she's the showrunner creator. She had no idea that I had lived in Tibet and I was there for 3 months, but that experience helped inform how I was going to create those characters. It was a very short sequence, but that's just an example. I think for me, it's just a constant, voracious love of knowledge and learning. I could never know enough. I'm always learning. In my work as a designer, in my union work with my colleagues who are here in front and to my right, it's a passion, it's a drive, but I think what's most important for me is standing in place and realizing that I can make a difference, but I can also speak the truth. And the truth is, in addition to being costume designers, if you're a designer of color, there is pay inequity. So you have a triple whammy. You're a woman, you're a costume designer, and you could be someone of color, or you could be someone of a sexual orientation. It's different now because we are on the pathway of transparency. Designers are talking and sharing their rates. They are sharing their deals. So we are all informed with how we should show up and what we should ask for, meaning what we need. And that is very profound for me because I had never experienced that before. I've never felt that level of communication and transparency the way I do now. And it's an exciting time for us. And in addition to telling the incredible stories and working with incredible collaborators, producers, writers, directors, and studios, there is room for that change to happen. And I believe in it, and I stand in it. And I can't do anything other than just be in that space. So.
All right.
Can I just share one thing?